All right, so I've downloaded this kind of rocky mist, and I moved it from my downloads onto my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my assignment 1 folder here. And my reference folder. So these references, they're pretty tiny. This mist now gets added to them. How can I make it so I can see them a little bit better in order to sketch using, around 5 of them, right? And I started the sketch with 3 of them. So this is what I suggest. Instead of opening them all up or trying to scroll through them on your phone, open them in a folder on your computer. I make it my reference folder in assignment 1. And then click on these 3 dots in this drop down at the top of what's called a Finder window. And then we're going to say Show View Options. Now, for Show View Options, you can play with the size of the icons and the space of the grid between them. And I just want to fit my references all onto the screen. I don't need to see them in detail. I just need to be reminded what they are and then see their shapes. And I've got a lot of weird stuff here. I've got lots of bones. I've got shark teeth. I've got dental models, all from Pixabay, looking at jaw bones. So I thought these could be fun components to work with. I've got things that are pretty and things that are kind of grotesque, right? And more challenging. So, of all of these, I want to think in terms of foreground, middle ground, and background. And as I started sketching, I knew I wanted to use certain things. So I had these rocks, for instance. And that's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up, pretend this is my sketchbook. I'm going to open up my PSD in Photoshop. This is just my digital sketching for the project, just so you can see the sketching process. And when you sketch, you use the brush tool. It's just digital painting, digital drafting. I'm going to shrink it so I can see my references while I sketch. All right. So, right here, these are right there. Those are the Canada rocks, right? So I might mark that green. That's one of my hero references. And then for the foreground, I don't really have too much yet, but I have these shark teeth. So I'm going to put those there. So that will be one of my foreground references. Remember, I can always cut out of them. I've got this kind of broken down skull, which can be a nice foreground rock or middle ground one. Notice that it's in nice sharp focus. So I'm going to call that skull. I'll put that here, my foreground skull. So now we have 3 things I'm using: the shark, the foreground skull, the Canada boulders, right, in the middle ground. And now what's this surrounding area? Well, this is going to be the mist. And it helps me to label things. As long as you know what it refers to, you can be as sloppy as you like. But that's going to be this. So now I have 4. And then, let's see, I need a background. And that's not spooky enough. I need a weird sky. So I think I actually need to find that. I also am going to throw into the middle ground this dental mold, just because it's so weird and gross and colorful. The model of the jaw. So I'll call that dental. And that's 5, but I don't have enough to start building it yet until I get that background plate. And this is the moodiest of the skies I have, but it's just not spooky enough. So what am I going to do? This is why you sketch once you have some reference, and then you improve your sketch by finding more. So I'm going to look for really spooky skies. And I don't like them when they're monochrome, right? When they're just one color, even if they're spooky. So let me see. I need them to be open and have jagged cliffs. So how can I look for that? Let's try spooky sky and cliffs. Remember, you got to, this is perfect, but you got to disregard this row because that's all trying to get you to pay money. You don't have the rights to use that. But this is really nice for that imposing background. And then this sky is really nice. So, like I said, you need to have at least 5, but you're likely going to have a lot more than 5. So this is going to be perfect for that kind of background mountain. So I can say download, highest quality. And then I don't want the foreground flowers, but I really like that purple and pink sky, kind of the heavy sky. So I'm going to say download. And because these are organic things, they can be stretched, they can be flipped, they can be altered in different ways. And we're all going to say thank you to Lucas George Wint for that lovely photo and donating it. Okay, now I'm going back to my sketches and to my reference photos, and I'm going to add those new ones, which went to downloads, to my photos, and I add them into my sketch. So now I have that mountain in the back. I'll call it a cliff. And that's marked green. And then the sky, got to bring that in. And that's going to be right here. We'll call it purple. Now this is figuring it out, this arrangement for horizontal. And there might be things I really like this weird bulbous rock, these Joshua trees, but they just don't fit in with this design, right? So if you really want to do your diligence and practice being transformative with your reference images, not being a slave to the reference, but really controlling it, then I recommend trying to sketch it both horizontal and vertically. So vertically, I'm going to use some of these other things. I want to use the bear teeth. This time, I'm going to make these ones purple. So let's see, bear teeth here. That'll probably be a stone with bear teeth. And then this ridge here, I want to use the skeleton, like the ridge of the spine. All right, map that onto a rock. So now that's 2 references I'm using, foreground and middle ground. Actually, I'll put the spine over here. Middle ground. And then what goes in the background? Well, I think that same cliff is pretty helpful. Let's see, what else do I have? No. Just because the lighting direction's too harsh. But that's pretty nice. So I'm going to call that, and I might resketch it a little bit. This kind of tower cliff with this lone tree. I'll call it tower. So now I have 3 references for the vertical one. And then I'm going to use the same mist, the same mountainy or coastal mist. So I'm going to mark that with green and purple. And that mist is going to fill in all through here. And then the background, I'm going to use that same sky. So that's going to be green and purple. And I'm going to call that purple. So how many references is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? With some boulders and things I'll have to bring in. So now I'm going to leave you guys to this. I actually think I know which one I prefer. But of those two, what do you think would be the more compelling fantasy landscape? Because horizontal and vertical have different qualities. So hands for the horizontal. Okay, horizontal is called landscape format because it's kind of how we see the land, right? It gives us a better sense of geography. Hands up for the vertical. Yeah. Me and Ash, we like the vertical. But what does the vertical do? The vertical gives you more like the individual perspective, right? It will make the viewer think that they are like on the path looking at this. Kind of like a hobbit's journey point of view rather than an expansive valley point of view. And that's really kind of a storytelling choice, right? Do you want it to seem expansive or do you want it to seem kind of closed in? So the class liked this one, so this is the one I'm going for. But it's really helpful to be able to draw them in multiple ways so you can get a sense of how the reference can be used. All right, now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and save this sketch. And I'm going to save it just like you would with taking a photo of your sketchbook. Once you have five references at least referenced in it, I'm going to save it as a copy and as a JPEG just to the desktop. And now this is the first thing I turn into Canvas. So I'm going to mark it orange because it's an online format, that JPEG. The PSD of my sketch is in my assignment 1 folder still, because that's where I was keeping it, right there. And how do I put it to Canvas? Very simple. I'm going to put the required, you don't need to label it, you just need to post it, planning sketch. Informed by at least 5 references. At the end of the day, kind of the sketch that you're showing to the client, right? And if I were doing this for a client, I've done similar things for like interior murals and things. I did a mural for a yoga studio, and they had a very clear idea of what kind of elements they wanted in this composite landscape, this fantasy landscape. But I do some sketches like this, and I let them kind of choose their preferred arrangement, right? And it's really loose, but it gives you a direction. So I'm going to shrink this a little bit so it's not so big, otherwise it will be huge. And then I hit reply and it posts. So this is the one I'm going with. So what's the next stage? And assignments are too complicated to give you step-by-steps in the directions like I did for exercises. So the next stage is to open up that sketch in Photoshop, or to open up the photo of the sketch that you've made in Photoshop. And then we're going to use some new tools. We need to turn it into an actual rectangle, right, that we control. So we're going to use the Move tool with the rulers. And if you don't see the rulers, hit Command R. That will turn them on and off. Your rulers should be based on inches. You'll know that if it's inches in the bottom left-hand corner, right? And then I'm going to click on the ruler with the Move tool and drag down what's called a guide. Click on the vertical ruler, drag, get a guide. And I'm going to frame in with the guides the sketch I want to use, just like that. Okay. Then I'm going to use the crop tool, which is underneath the magic wand. We have not used this before. And I'm going to bring those corners to my guides. And I recommend never using crop without using guides, because it's a dangerous tool, because it